After 12 years of dedication, my boss promoted a brown noser who delivered nothing. I resigned with a smile. It was only a matter of time before the company collapsed. But let me back up. My name is Gary, and I thought loyalty meant something in corporate America. Boy, was I wrong. It was 3 a.m. on a Tuesday when my phone buzzed for the third time. Another critical system failure. While most people were sleeping peacefully, I was already pulling on my jeans, grabbing my laptop, and heading back to the office. This wasn't unusual. It was my life. "Gary, thank God you picked up." Johnson's voice cracked through the speaker. "The backup servers are down again, and we've got that massive client presentation tomorrow." I could have said no. I could have reminded him that I'd already worked 14 hours that day. Instead, I just said, "I'll be there in 20 minutes. The office was eerily quiet at that hour, just the hum of servers and the clicking of my keyboard as I dove into the code. By 6 a.m., I'd identified the problem, a cascade failure in the redundancy system I'd designed 3 years earlier. The same system that had saved the company from a data breach that could have cost us everything. As the sun came up, I finally fixed the issue. The servers hummed back to life, and our client data was safe. I grabbed a stale donut from the break room and checked my phone. 7 missed calls from my wife, Sarah. "Daddy?" My 8-year-old daughter, Emma's voice, was tiny when I called home. "Mommy said you had to work again. Are you coming to my soccer game today?" My heart sank. "I'm sorry, sweetheart. Daddy had to fix something important at work." "You always have to fix something," she whispered before handing the phone back to Sarah. "Gary, she practiced for weeks to show you her new goal kick." Sarah's voice was tired, not angry. That somehow made it worse. "I know your work is important, but—" "I know. I'll make it up to her. This weekend, I promise." But even as I said it, I knew there would probably be another emergency. There always was. Johnson arrived at 8 a.m., looking fresh and rested. "Gary, you're a lifesaver. What was the issue?" I explained the technical details, how I'd implemented a temporary patch, and what we needed to do for a permanent fix. He nodded along, probably understanding half of what I was saying. "This is exactly why you're invaluable to us," he said, patting my shoulder. "I don't know what we'd do without you." I believed him. After 12 years, I truly believed I was valued here. That afternoon, I was deep in documentation when I noticed something odd in the system logs. Someone had been poking around in areas they shouldn't have access to. The digital fingerprints led to an interesting discovery. There was a vulnerability in our authentication system that I'd missed during the last security audit. My finger hovered over the phone to call Johnson immediately. But something made me pause. If I reported this now, there would be questions about how long it had been there, why I hadn't caught it sooner. Better to fix it quietly and then report it as a proactive security enhancement. I spent the next 2 hours crafting an elegant solution, closing the vulnerability without disrupting any active sessions. It was the kind of work I was proud of, invisible to users, but critical for security. "Working late again?" Johnson appeared at my cubicle around 7 p.m. "Just tightening up some security protocols," I said, not wanting to get into the details before I had everything perfect. "That's what I like to hear. Hey, I want you to meet someone." He gestured to a guy in his early 30s wearing an expensive suit and an even more expensive smile. "This is Brown Mitchell. He's joining our team as a senior consultant." Brown extended a manicured hand. "Gary, I've heard so much about you. They say you're the backbone of this operation." Something about his tone felt off, but I shook his hand anyway. Welcome to the team. Over the next few weeks, I started noticing things. Small things at first. Brown would sit in on meetings I usually led, asking questions that seemed designed to extract information rather than understand processes. He had a way of nodding enthusiastically at my explanations, while simultaneously positioning himself as the one bringing fresh perspectives to old problems. You know, Gary, he said during one particularly frustrating system design meeting, your approach is very traditional. Maybe we should explore some more innovative solutions. I'd been building enterprise systems since Brown was probably in high school, but I kept my mouth shut. No point in getting defensive over someone who was just trying to learn the ropes. The first real red flag came 3 weeks later. I was presenting the quarterly security report to the leadership team when Johnson interrupted me. Actually, Gary, I think Brown has some additional insights on this topic. Brown stood up smoothly, pulling out a sleek presentation I'd never seen before. Thanks, Johnson. As Gary mentioned, we've been working hard on security enhancements. I've taken the liberty of developing a comprehensive strategy for our authentication protocols. My blood went cold as he started describing my security vulnerability fix, the one I'd discovered and resolved weeks earlier, as if it were his original research. He had slides, metrics, even cost-benefit analyses. It was professional, polished, and completely based on my work. This proactive approach to security architecture, Brown continued, demonstrates the kind of forward-thinking leadership our IT department can provide. The room was impressed. I could see it in their faces. Brown had taken my technical solution and wrapped it in corporate speak that resonated with executives. When the presentation ended, they were congratulating him on his thoroughness and strategic thinking. Johnson clapped me on the shoulder afterward. Great work supporting Brown on this initiative, Gary. This is exactly the kind of collaboration we need to see more of. I wanted to scream. Instead, I just nodded and walked back to my desk. That night, I called my mother like I did every Wednesday. "How's work going, honey?" she asked. "Your cousin David just made partner at his accounting firm. He's only been there 8 years. "Work's fine, Mom." "You've been at that company for 12 years now, Gary. Haven't they promoted you to management yet? I keep telling the ladies at Bridge Club that my son runs the computer department." "It's complicated, Mom." "Well, maybe you need to speak up more. You're too humble, just like your father. Sometimes you have to toot your own horn." If only it were that simple. The next morning, I arrived early to prepare for a critical system upgrade. We were migrating our core database to new servers, and I'd spent months planning every detail. The migration window was tight. We had to complete everything over the weekend to minimize disruption to business operations. I was reviewing the final checklist when Brown appeared with his coffee and that same practice smile. "Big day today, huh, Gary? I've been looking forward to this." "You've been looking forward to a database migration?" "Well, yeah. Johnson asked me to observe the process so I can document best practices for future projects. You don't mind if I shadow you, do you?" "Mind?" Of course I minded. This was delicate work that required focus, not an audience. But Brown had Johnson's blessing, so what choice did I have? Just try to stay out of the way, okay? The migration started at 6 p.m. Friday. By Saturday afternoon, we were behind schedule. The new servers were more temperamental than expected, and I'd had to write custom scripts to handle data inconsistencies, we hadn't anticipated during testing. I was on hour 36 without sleep, surviving on vending machine coffee and pure adrenaline when Brown made his suggestion. You know, Gary, maybe we should consider rolling back and trying a different approach. This seems pretty risky. We're fine, I said through gritted teeth. I've done this before. I'm just saying, from a project management perspective, we might want to reassess our strategy. I turned to face him. Brown, with all due respect, you've been here 3 months. I designed this system. I built the migration plan. I know what I'm doing. He held up his hands in mock surrender. Hey, I'm just trying to help. No need to get defensive. By Sunday morning, the migration was complete. Everything was running smoothly. Data integrity was perfect, and we'd managed to finish just before the Monday morning deadline. I was exhausted, but proud. Another crisis averted. Another impossible deadline met. Brown, who had spent most of the weekend taking notes and making phone calls, was suddenly very interested in the final success metrics. This is incredible, Gary. The performance improvements are better than projected. Johnson's going to be thrilled. I barely had energy to respond. I just wanted to go home, shower, and sleep for 12 hours. Monday morning's leadership meeting was where everything changed. I wasn't supposed to be there. These executive sessions were usually above my pay grade. But Johnson had specifically requested my attendance to present the migration results. I was prepared to walk them through the technical achievements, the cost savings, the performance improvements. Instead, I found myself sitting in stunned silence as Brown delivered a comprehensive presentation on strategic database modernization, a case study in effective IT leadership. He had charts showing the planning timeline, metrics demonstrating the success rates, even testimonials from users about improved system responsiveness. It was my work, my weekend, my exhaustion, packaged and presented as his strategic vision. The key to this project's success, Brown explained to the nodding executives, was taking a holistic approach to change management. Rather than just focusing on technical implementation, we considered the broader organizational impact. We? I wanted to stand up and scream that there was no we. There was me, working alone in a server room for 48 hours straight while he took notes and made suggestions. Outstanding work, Brown, said the CEO. This is exactly the kind of innovative thinking we need to see more of in our IT operations. Johnson beamed like a proud parent. Brown's bringing a fresh perspective to our technology strategy. Gary, you should be proud to be part of such a forward-thinking initiative. Proud. I was supposed to be proud that my work was being credited to someone else. After the meeting, I cornered Johnson in his office. We need to talk about that presentation. Great, wasn't it? Brown really knows how to communicate technical concepts to a business audience. You could learn something from his presentation skills. Johnson, that was my project, my planning, my implementation, my weekend. I didn't see Brown touch a single server or write one line of code. Johnson looked uncomfortable. Gary, I think you're being a little territorial here. Brown was clear that this was a collaborative effort. He gave you credit for the technical execution. Technical execution? I designed the entire migration strategy. Look, I understand you're feeling overlooked, but Brown brings a strategic perspective that, frankly, we've been missing. He knows how to present our work in a way that resonates with leadership. So my 12 years of experience and actual expertise matter less than his PowerPoint skills? Johnson sighed. That's not what I'm saying. But perception matters in this business, Gary. Brown understands that. I left his office feeling like I'd been punched in the stomach. 12 years of sacrifice, of missed family dinners and weekend emergencies, and it all came down to perception. That evening, Emma was in the backyard practicing her soccer kicks when I finally made it home. Daddy, look what I learned. She demonstrated a perfect corner kick that sailed into the makeshift goal we'd set up between two trees. That's amazing, sweetheart. Coach says I might make the travel team if I keep practicing. Will you come to my tryouts? I looked at her hopeful face and made a decision. Absolutely. Nothing will keep me from being there. Promise? Promise. As I watched her practice, I thought about what really mattered. Emma would remember whether I was at her tryouts. She wouldn't remember or care about database migrations or server upgrades. But somehow, I'd let work convince me that missing her childhood was noble sacrifice. Meanwhile, Brown was probably at home with his feet up, taking credit for my sacrifice. The final straw came 3 weeks later. I was troubleshooting a network issue when I overheard Brown on a phone call in the conference room. The door was slightly ajar, and his voice carried clearly into the hallway. No, I think Gary's approach is too conservative, he was saying. We need someone with vision leading these initiatives. He's great at the technical stuff, but he doesn't see the bigger picture. I froze. He was talking to someone about me, and from the tone, it sounded like a job interview or performance review. Exactly, Brown continued. He's been here so long that he's stuck in old ways of thinking. The company needs fresh leadership if we're going to stay competitive. Fresh leadership. From someone who'd been here 3 months and couldn't configure a printer without help. I walked away before I heard the rest of the conversation. But I'd heard enough. That night, I lay awake thinking about everything. The missed soccer games, the emergency calls at 3 a.m., the weekends spent in server rooms while Brown got credit for my work. I thought about my mother asking why I hadn't been promoted, about Emma growing up while I was fixing other people's problems. But mostly, I thought about that phone call. Brown wasn't just taking credit for my work anymore. He was actively undermining me, positioning himself as my replacement. The smart thing would have been to fight back through proper channels, document everything, present evidence to HR, make a case for my contributions. But as I lay there listening to Sarah's gentle breathing beside me, I realized something important. I didn't want to fight for a place that didn't value me. I wanted something better. The next morning, I started planning. Not a presentation or a defensive strategy, but an exit plan. If they wanted fresh leadership so badly, they could see how fresh things got without the person who actually kept their systems running. I began documenting everything I did, but not in the way you might expect. Instead of creating handover documentation, I started noting all the critical processes that existed only in my head. The passwords I'd never shared, the workarounds for system quirks, the maintenance routines that prevented catastrophic failures. 12 years of institutional knowledge that had never been properly documented because I was always too busy fixing the next emergency to write it down. Over the next 2 weeks, I watched Brown continue his campaign of subtle sabotage. He'd volunteer for high-visibility projects, then delegate the actual work to junior team members while taking credit for the results. He had a talent for being in the right meetings at the right times, always ready with a polished opinion on topics he barely understood. Meanwhile, I kept the lights on. I fixed the servers, patched the security holes, and maintained the systems that kept the company running. Invisible work that enabled Brown's visible success. The announcement came on a Thursday morning. Johnson called an all-hands meeting for the IT department. We gathered in the conference room, and I had a sinking feeling about what was coming. I'm excited to announce that we're restructuring our IT leadership, Johnson began. As our technology needs become more complex, we need strategic thinking at the management level. Here it comes, I thought. Brown Mitchell will be taking on the role of IT director, effective immediately. His strategic vision and fresh perspective will help us modernize our approach to technology management. The room was silent. I could feel my colleagues' eyes on me, waiting for my reaction. Some looked sympathetic, others just uncomfortable. Everyone knew this was wrong, but no one was going to say anything. Brown stood up with that practiced smile. "Thank you, Johnson. I'm honored by this opportunity. I want to thank everyone for their support, especially during these past few months as I've learned from such a talented team." He made eye contact with me during that last sentence, and I saw something that made my blood boil. Pity. He felt sorry for me. In his mind, he was the deserving winner, and I was the gracious loser who should be thankful for the opportunity to learn from his leadership. I look forward to working with all of you as we take our technology capabilities to the next level. Brown continued. We have exciting challenges ahead, and I know this team has the talent to meet them. Talent he planned to take credit for, no doubt. When the meeting ended, my colleagues filed out quietly. A few patted my shoulder or gave me sympathetic looks, but no one knew what to say. What was there to say? Everyone could see what had happened, but corporate politics made it impossible to acknowledge. Brown approached me as I was gathering my things. "Gary, I hope you know how much I value your expertise. I'm really looking forward to working together in this new capacity." I looked at him for a long moment. He seemed genuinely convinced that he deserved this promotion, that his 3 months of PowerPoint presentations outweighed my 12 years of actual work. "Congratulations, Brown," I said finally. "I'm sure you'll do great." He seemed relieved by my response. "Thanks, Gary. That means a lot coming from you." As he walked away, I realized something that surprised me. I wasn't angry anymore. I was calm, clear-headed. For the first time in months, I knew exactly what I needed to do. I went home that evening and found Emma in her room, working on homework. "Hey, sweetheart, how was school?" "Good. Guess what? Tryouts are next Friday. You promised you'd be there, remember?" "I remember, and I'll definitely be there." "Even if work needs you?" I sat down on her bed and looked into her trusting eyes. "Emma, I promise you that nothing at work is more important than being there for you." "Really? Really? In fact, Daddy might have some big changes coming at work. Good changes." That night, after Emma was asleep, I sat at my home computer and opened a blank document. At the top, I typed "Letter of Resignation." I spent 2 hours crafting it. The first paragraph was standard corporate speak about pursuing new opportunities and appreciating my time with the company. Professional, polite, unremarkable. But the second paragraph was where I let my feelings show, carefully worded but unmistakably clear about why I was leaving. I wrote about the importance of recognizing actual contributions versus political maneuvering, about the value of institutional knowledge, about leadership that develops talent instead of exploiting it. Then I came to the final line, the one that would make everything clear. I typed it, deleted it, typed it again. It was perfect. Professional enough to avoid any legal issues, but pointed enough to make my message unmistakable. P.S. Good luck maintaining the systems without the documentation I never had time to write. Hini. I printed the letter, signed it, and put it in an envelope. Tomorrow, I would hand it to Johnson with a smile and walk away from 12 years of my life. But as I sealed the envelope, I wasn't thinking about the past. I was thinking about Emma's tryouts, about being present for my family, about finding a place that would value what I actually contributed instead of just taking it for granted. Brown wanted to be the strategic leader? Perfect. Let him lead. Let him discover what happened when strategy met reality without someone like me to bridge the gap. I went to bed that night, sleeping better than I had in months. Friday morning came faster than I expected. I walked into the office with my resignation letter in my jacket pocket, feeling strangely peaceful. For the first time in years, I wasn't checking my phone for emergency alerts or mentally running through my task list. I had clarity. I knocked on Johnson's door at exactly 9 a.m. "Gary, come in. I was just thinking we should schedule a one-on-one to discuss how you'll be supporting Brown in his new role." "Actually, Johnson, that's why I'm here." I pulled out the envelope and placed it on his desk. "I'm resigning." His face went through several expressions: confusion, disbelief, then something approaching panic. "What? Gary, we can't discuss this. What's this about?" "I've accepted another opportunity. 2 weeks' notice, as outlined in the letter." He tore open the envelope and read quickly. I watched his expression change as he got to the final line. His face went pale. "Gary, we need to talk about this. About the documentation comment. What exactly does that mean?" I smiled. The same polite smile I'd perfected over 12 years of corporate meetings. "It means exactly what it says, Johnson. Good luck. You can't just leave. We have critical systems, ongoing projects, all of which are fully documented in the same place I've always kept documentation." I let that hang in the air for a moment. Oh, wait, that's right. I never had time to document anything because I was too busy fixing emergencies. Johnson's hands were actually shaking slightly. "Gary, let's not be hasty here. If this is about the promotion, we can discuss other opportunities." "This isn't about the promotion, Johnson. This is about respect. And I've realized I can't make you respect something you've never valued." I turned to leave, then paused at the door. "Brown starts Monday as IT director, right? Perfect timing. He'll have 2 whole weeks to learn everything I do." The next 2 weeks were fascinating to watch unfold. On Monday, Brown showed up early, clearly excited about his new authority. He'd even bought a new suit for the occasion. "Gary, ready for a productive transition period?" he said, settling into the office that had never been offered to me in 12 years. "Absolutely. What would you like to start with?" "Well, I figure I should get familiar with our core systems. Maybe you could walk me through the architecture?" I spent the morning giving him a high-level overview of our infrastructure. Brown took copious notes, nodding confidently as I explained the various components. But I could see the exact moment when he realized something important. Understanding the concept of a system and actually managing it are completely different things. "So, when you say automated backup processes, These just run themselves, right? Define run themselves, I said carefully. I mean, they're automated, so they don't need oversight. They're automated in the sense that they execute on schedule. But someone needs to monitor them, verify integrity, handle failures, update rotation schedules. Brown's pen stopped moving. How often do they fail? Depends on your definition of failure. Complete failure? Maybe once a quarter. Partial failures requiring intervention? 2 or 3 times a week. 2 or 3 times a week? Brown's voice climbed slightly. But they're automated. Yes, and your car is engineered to run reliably, but you still change the oil. By Wednesday, Brown was looking stressed. He'd attended his first executive meeting as IT director and had been asked specific questions about system capacity, security protocols, and upgrade timelines. Questions that required actual knowledge, not just strategic vision. Gary, I need those documentation files you mentioned. Johnson said you'd have comprehensive technical documentation. I do have documentation. It's quite comprehensive. Great. Where is it? I gestured to my head. Right here. 12 years of it. Brown stared at me. That's not funny, Gary. I'm not joking. You know how you've been here 3 months, and Johnson kept you busy with strategic initiatives and presentation development? I've been here 12 years, being too busy keeping the systems running to write comprehensive documentation. But there has to be something written down. Network diagrams, system specifications, procedure manuals. Oh, there are some things. Basic network topology is documented from 2019, though we've made significant changes since then. System specs are available for most servers, assuming you know which specs go with which applications. As for procedures, I shrugged. I've been meaning to write those down. By Thursday, the first cracks were showing. The automated backup for our client database had thrown an error at 3 a.m. The system had sent an alert to my phone, which I'd silenced months ago, when I realized I was the only one who ever responded to them anyway. Brown discovered the failed backup during his morning system check, something I'd taught him to do earlier in the week. Gary, the backup failed last night. How do I fix this? I looked at the error message on his screen. Well, that's a configuration conflict with the new storage array we installed last month. The backup process is trying to write to a directory that doesn't exist anymore. Okay, so how do I create the directory? You don't. The directory structure changed because we upgraded the underlying file system. You need to update the backup configuration to point to the new paths. Where's the backup configuration? Which part? There's the scheduler configuration, the target location settings, the compression parameters, the retention policies. Brown was starting to look panicked. Can you fix this? I'll watch and learn. I could, but you're the IT director now. This seems like something you should handle. Gary, come on. I'm still learning the systems. And that's exactly why this transition period exists, so you can learn. I spent an hour walking him through the backup restoration process, explaining each step and why it was necessary. Brown took notes frantically, but I could see he was struggling to keep up with the technical details. Friday afternoon brought the first real crisis. Our main application server started throwing memory errors, causing intermittent outages for our largest client. Brown called me over to his office, looking frazzled. Gary, we have a serious problem. The Hartwell account is experiencing service interruptions, and they're threatening to pull their contract if we don't fix it immediately. I looked at the error logs on his screen. Yeah, that's the memory leak in the invoice processing module. It builds up over time and eventually crashes the application. How do we fix it? Restart the application service and apply the temporary patch I wrote last month. What temporary patch? The one I implemented to buy us time while we waited for the vendor to release a permanent fix. Where is this patch? On my development machine, in a folder called Hartwell Hotfixes, along with about 6 other emergency patches for various issues. Brown stared at me. Are these patches documented anywhere? They're commented in the code. Gary, I need you to implement this patch right now. Hartwell is having a conference call with Johnson in an hour. I'd be happy to, but you're the IT director. Shouldn't you be handling this? I don't know how to apply code patches. Then maybe you should learn. It's a pretty basic IT director skill. By the time I finished walking Brown through the patch application process, Hartwell's outage had lasted 2 hours. Johnson was furious, and Brown was starting to realize that strategic vision didn't prevent servers from crashing. Monday of my second week brought a call I'd been expecting. Johnson asked me to come to his office immediately. Brown was already there, looking like he hadn't slept. Gary, we need to discuss extending your transition period. 2 weeks isn't enough time to properly hand over your responsibilities. I disagree. 2 weeks is plenty of time to hand over responsibilities that are properly documented and systematically organized. But you just admitted that most of your processes aren't documented. I admitted that I never had time to document them because I was too busy actually doing them. That's not the same thing as saying they can't be documented. Brown leaned forward desperately. Gary, I'll be honest. I'm in over my head here. These systems are more complex than I realized. They're really not. But complexity and familiarity are different things. You can learn this stuff, Brown. It just takes time. How much time? I pretended to consider this seriously. For someone with your background, probably 2, maybe 3 years to reach basic competency. 5 to 7 years to really master the environment. Brown's face went white. 5 to 7 years? Hey, it only took me 12. You're getting a head start. Johnson looked desperate. Gary, what would it take to get you to stay? We could discuss a promotion, a significant raise. Johnson, 3 months ago, I would have been thrilled by that conversation. But you had 3 months to recognize my value, and instead, you promoted someone else. Someone who, by his own admission, doesn't understand the systems he's now responsible for. Mistakes were made, Johnson admitted, but we can fix this. You're right, you can fix this by letting me leave gracefully and giving Brown the opportunity to learn and grow into his role. That afternoon, Brown cornered me at my desk. Gary, I need to ask you something off the record. Sure. Are you sabotaging me? I looked up from my keyboard. What do you mean? I mean, are you deliberately making this harder than it needs to be? Because I feel like you're being unhelpful. Brown, I've spent the last week and a half walking you through processes, explaining systems, and showing you how to handle emergencies. How is that unhelpful? You're not giving me the shortcuts, the quick fixes, the stuff that actually makes the job manageable. I sat back in my chair. Brown, there are no shortcuts. The quick fixes are 12 years of experience recognizing patterns and knowing which problems can wait and which ones can't. That's not something I can download into your brain. But surely there are documented procedures, standard practices. There are some. But most of what I do is reactive. Server crashes, Network failures, security breaches, performance issues, these don't follow standard procedures. They require understanding how all the pieces fit together. Brown looked frustrated. So how am I supposed to learn all of this? The same way I did. One crisis at a time, making mistakes, staying late to fix them, gradually building knowledge and instincts. That could take years. Yes, it could. But hey, look on the bright side. You've got strategic vision and presentation skills. Maybe you can PowerPoint your way through a server crash. Friday afternoon arrived with predictable timing. I was packing up my personal items when my phone rang. Johnson. Gary, we have a situation. The entire email system is down, and Brown can't figure out what's wrong. That's unfortunate. Gary, I need you to come in and fix this. Johnson, today is my last day. As of 5 p.m., I'm no longer an employee. Just this once. Emergency consulting. What's Brown doing about it? He's trying. But he called the email vendor, and they said the problem is on our end. Something about DNS configuration. I almost smiled. DNS issues were notoriously tricky to diagnose if you didn't know what to look for. Did you check the event logs on the domain controller? Gary, I don't know what that means. Brown doesn't know what that means. Then maybe Brown should call a consultant. I hear there are lots of qualified IT professionals looking for work. Gary, please, just this once. Johnson, you made a choice 3 months ago about what kind of IT leadership you wanted. You wanted strategic vision over technical expertise. You wanted fresh perspectives over institutional knowledge. You got exactly what you asked for. We made a mistake. Yes, you did, but it's your mistake to live with. I hung up and finished packing my things. As I walked out of the building, for the last time, I could see Brown through the conference room window, gesticulating frantically to a room full of executives, probably explaining how this was a temporary setback, how systems failures happen, how he was implementing a strategic approach to problem resolution. Monday morning, I woke up naturally for the first time in years. No emergency alerts, no early morning crisis calls. I made coffee, read the news, and got Emma ready for school without rushing. Daddy, you seem different, Emma said as we drove to her school. Different how? Happier, less worried. I am happier, sweetheart. Daddy found a new job where people appreciate what he does. Are you still going to fix computers? Yes, but for people who understand that fixing computers is important work. My new position at Data Secure Solutions was everything my old job should have been. They'd been trying to recruit me for 2 years, impressed by my reputation in the industry. The salary was 40% higher. The benefits were better. And most importantly, they valued technical expertise over political maneuvering. Gary, we're thrilled to have you on board, said my new boss, Rebecca Chen. Your experience with enterprise systems is exactly what we need for the Morrison Industries contract. Thank you. I'm excited to be here. One thing I want to be clear about from day one: documentation and knowledge transfer are priorities here. We never want to be in a position where critical information exists in only one person's head. That sounds like a lesson learned from experience. It is. We've seen too many companies crippled by knowledge gaps when key people leave. We invest in proper documentation, cross-training, and systematic knowledge management. For the first time in years, I felt valued for what I actually contributed rather than taken for granted. 3 weeks into my new job, my phone rang during lunch. Johnson, Gary, I know you don't want to hear from me, but we're in serious trouble." "What kind of trouble?" "The backup system crashed last weekend, and we lost 3 days of client data. Brown tried to restore from the previous backup, but something went wrong. We're looking at potential lawsuits." "Did you call the vendor?" "They said the problem is with our configuration. Gary, I'm begging you. Just one consultation to help us fix this. Name your price." I thought about it for exactly 3 seconds. "Johnson, I'm sorry, but I can't help you." "Why not?" I said, "Name your price." "It's not about money. It's about principle. You had 12 years to value my expertise. You chose not to. I'm not going to bail you out now because you're finally experiencing the consequences of that choice. Gary, this could destroy the company." "Then maybe you should have thought of that before you promoted someone who didn't understand what they were taking responsibility for." I hung up and went back to my lunch. Rebecca noticed my expression when I returned to the office. "Everything okay?" Just my former employer discovering what happens when you confuse leadership with management. The classic mistake of promoting the best presenter instead of the best performer? Something like that. Over the next few months, I heard updates through mutual contacts in the industry. My old company was hemorrhaging clients. Brown had lasted 6 weeks as IT director before being reassigned to a business development role. Johnson had been fired after the board lost confidence in his department's management. They'd hired 3 consultants to try to rebuild their IT infrastructure. But without institutional knowledge, they were essentially starting from scratch. The consulting fees alone were costing them more than my entire department's annual budget. 6 months after I left, I got an unexpected call. The new CEO. "Mr. Patterson, this is David Morrison, CEO of TechFlow Solutions. I understand you used to work here." I did. "I'm calling because we're in the process of rebuilding our IT department, and frankly, we need someone who understands these systems. Would you be interested in coming back as Chief Technology Officer?" The offer was tempting. CTO position, equity stake, significant salary increase, complete authority over IT strategy and operations. Everything I'd worked toward for 12 years. "Mr. Morrison, I appreciate the offer, but I'm not interested." "May I ask why?" "We're prepared to offer a very competitive package." "It's not about the package. It's about the fact that you're only offering this because you're desperate. If your company had valued technical expertise in the first place, you wouldn't be in this situation." "I understand your hesitation, but I want to be clear. The previous management team is gone. We're building a completely new culture that values substance over style." "I'm sure you are, but some bridges should stay burned." A year later, I was promoted to Senior Systems Architect at Data Secure. I was working on challenging projects with cutting-edge technology. My expertise was respected and valued, and I'd never missed one of Emma's soccer games. Emma made the travel team, just like she'd hoped. At her first tournament, she scored the winning goal in the championship game. As she ran toward me with her arms raised in celebration, I realized something important. This was worth more than any promotion, any recognition, any corporate title I could have ever achieved. That evening, as I was tucking her into bed, Emma looked up at me with those trusting eyes. "Daddy, I'm proud of you." "Proud of me? For what?" "For being at my game. For keeping your promises. For being my dad." I kissed her forehead and whispered, "I'm proud of me too, sweetheart." It just took me a while to figure out what was really worth being proud of. As I turned off her light and closed her door, I thought about my old company. probably still struggling with systems I'd built and maintained for 12 years. I thought about Brown, learning the hard way that strategy without substance is just expensive PowerPoint. I thought about Johnson, discovering too late that loyalty and competence aren't the same thing. But mostly, I thought about the lesson I'd learned. Your worth isn't determined by people who can't see it. Sometimes the best thing you can do is walk away and find people who can. The company did eventually collapse, just like I'd predicted. Not immediately. These things take time. But inevitably, when you prioritize politics over performance, appearance over ability, strategy over substance, the outcome is predictable. They'd forgotten the most basic rule of technology. Systems are only as reliable as the people who understand them. And understanding isn't something you can fake, delegate, or learn from a PowerPoint presentation. It's something you earn, one crisis at a time, over 12 long years of getting your hands dirty and keeping the lights on. They traded that understanding for a smile and a suit. In the end, that trade cost them everything.